Hey everyone, Ingrid here. So today's video is all about how to sew one of these change mat covers. So you can use any fabric you want and customize your nursery. Now we have a baby girl coming and I'm so excited. So I'm doing DIY projects. Now I'm a terrible sewer, but I managed to make 3 of these. So if you want to learn how to do it, then keep watching. So obviously the first thing we're going to do is measure our change mat. I'm using inches. It's just a little bit easier for me, but you can also use centimeters. And I'm loosely measuring the width, the length, and the height. So after much trial and error, this is the formula that ended up working the best for me. So you might want to screenshot this, and I'll also put it down in the description box so you have it. But this is how much fabric we're going to be cutting out. Once we have cut out our rectangle piece of fabric, we're also going to be cutting out a little square. And if you keep watching, this will make a little bit more sense if you're a visual learner. I failed to mention that I bought a meter of fabric from the store to make this change mat because I knew that that would be enough to cover it regardless of what size rectangle I cut out. So now I'm just measuring out that rectangle. 42 was the length, 36 was the width. I'm just making a few light marks where I need to cut and cutting as straight as I possibly can. I'm not too fussed with if it's perfectly straight. We're gonna sew it in a minute, so just do the best you can. Once we finish measuring, we're gonna fold this twice to make almost a square. And I'm gonna hold up where the raw edges are. So that's where we're gonna be cutting out our 8x8 square. And you can see that's where I've cut. Those are all cut edges and they're called raw edges in sewing. Just measuring out that 8x8 square that we're going to cut out now. So we've cut the square out and we can open it up and see this is our basic shape that we're going to take over to the sewing machine now. Okay, this part is a little hard to explain without a pattern, so I'll include a small clip of what it looks like with a pattern. But basically, you want to be sewing this inside out, so the top side of your fabric should be facing each other, okay? So the cut sides are down, and the pattern is top side down before you start sewing. The bottoms are getting sewn together. Just think inside out. So taking this over to my sewing machine, we're going to sew straight along that edge. I usually just line it up with the presser foot. And you go straight across, and you can double back a little bit just to make sure that it's nice and secure. So these are going to be the corners of the change mat. Again, it's inside out now. If you have a pattern, the pattern will be on the inside. So you're just going to repeat this process with all 4 corners. So at this point, if you want to check how your progress is going, you can flip it over and just see if those corners are lining up with your change mat. And that's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. Obviously it's baggy, but now we're going to sew the line for the elastic. So the stitching's looking pretty nice on top, and this is our inside. Now we're going to be sewing that pocket for the elastic to fit into, okay? So the piece of elastic I'm using, it's about 3/4 of an inch. It's a nice big thick piece of elastic. So we're going to fold the top over. If it's still confusing you what the top and the bottom are, I've included a little clip of the pattern one I did. So you can see the pattern is side down and you just fold the top over like that. We'll measure out that thickness. It's about 1.5 inches to, honestly, let's say 2 inches, just to be rounding it out. I'm kind of folding it down. You could iron it, but I'm really not that fussy, so I'm just pinning it. I go all around the whole thing, pinning and kind of smoothing out. We've got everything pinned down, so now it's time to sew. So just move your presser foot towards the cut edge And that's where I'm going to be following the line. And every time you get to a pin, just pull it out. You repeat this process, and you really have to be careful that the fabric doesn't bunch up too much underneath. So I'm just going slow. I mean, you can always rip it out. Believe me, a few times I had to rip it out because I folded. That just was going too fast. So it's best to go slow and careful of that fabric that starts to bunch up on the right side. Once we've almost finished the entire thing, we stop and leave a hole. Not a big hole, just a hole that's big enough to sort of fit a finger in. You're going to be threading that elastic through, so probably just a finger's worth is plenty of space. And make sure you're cutting off your threads as you go. I tend to forget to do that and then end up with so much extra thread. And just check your work and make sure there's no bunching up anywhere and that all of the lines are looking good. So find that hole again, and now the fun part of putting the elastic through. So I'm just attaching it to a big safety pin and finding that hole again, and we just start the process of threading it through. Believe me, this is a lot easier with a big safety pin. It doesn't take too long, but just kind of bunch it up as you go. Oh, and the elastic is 36 inches, by the way. When you get to the end, carefully hold on to the other end that's loose. You don't want to pull that through. You'll have to start the whole process over again. So gently just see how everything's going. We're gonna have to sew these two pieces of elastic, the ends together, which is a little bit tricky. Just be super careful, hold them together, and then you want to try and sew them together without getting any fabric involved. So just go really slow and go backwards and forwards to sort of secure it into place as best as you can. After you've cut off all the millions of pieces of thread, we are going to now close up the home and finish our little project here. Yay! I'm just tearing off all the bits of thread, making sure it looks as clean as possible, and then sewing just straight along that line where we left off and closing up the hole. So this is what it looks like when it's all finished and sewed up. It's still inside out, so the last step is to flip it right side up and put it on your change mat. And it fits, hooray! Yay, so happy to have that done. One more project ticked off for the nursery, and I'm exhausted because I'm not a good sewer and it took me a while, so it's time for a nap. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope it was helpful to some of you out there. And if you like these kind of videos, give us a subscribe. I would love to have you here. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.